You're listening to Last Word Radio, where you get your last word.
Welcome to the Fourth Line Podcast, part of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. This is April the 17th, 2018. With you today is myself, Carl, and the always wonderful Joel. We are a day late, but the great news about that is we let both of our teams win before recording the show. So I think we're in a little bit better mood than we would have been this time yesterday.
Probably. It would have been miserable, I think, if we had done it.
It would have been woe is me corner, I think we could call it. Or just like a rant shack filled episode. Maybe not even rant shack filled. It would just have been sad.
Very sad. Very, very sad. So I do have big news, though.
Okay.
I saw the Penguins live.
Really? I did not. Where, in Philly or in Pittsburgh?
Calgary?
I don't. So, like, you're bringing us old news. Like, they haven't been through Calgary for some time.
No, I was on Saturday. I went and saw the Penguins. All of them. There was like 12.
Joel, there's a couple reasons why you could have seen the Penguins. Some of them we won't mention on the show. Maybe it was a dream. Maybe you were tired and you think you saw the Penguins, but Sid, Malkin, Phil, not there.
I did name a bunch of them. I named one hot dog. I named another one Philip. I named another one Kessel.
So what I'm gathering, you went to the zoo, did you?
I went to the zoo on Saturday and I saw penguins.
Okay.
It was great.
I appreciate that the only Pittsburgh Penguin that you decided to name them after were Phil Kessel and Phil Kessel related things. That's nice.
Yeah. Do you know how funny penguins are? Like actual penguins, not like Sidney Crosby penguins,
yeah,
but
he's not that funny at all. Actual ones are incredible. You should try to put them on ice. That would be quite fantastic. Give them a puck. It would go terribly, but you should do it.
Yeah, and they waddle and like eat. There's a penguin eating grass. I don't think they're supposed to eat grass.
I don't. I assume they could like have some vegetation. They're probably not just like pure meat eaters.
I don't know. I didn't think penguins like grew up in environments that had grass.
I think they do. I don't know. There's from watching Planet Earth, which is my sole source of animal knowledge at this point. I believe that there's some that grow in like temperate zones, not just like Antarctica.
I don't know about that.
Well,
we have to fact check that. But
okay, we will fact check that.
Do they? I don't know. I thought they were hilarious. I actually think I would pay money to see penguins on the ice with the Pittsburgh Penguins skating around them.
You have to wonder why that hasn't happened yet, right? Like, there's so few opportunities for you to actually see the name of a team. Like, you cannot watch an actual Avalanche with the Colorado Avalanche. You cannot see
the Wild.
Like, I guess you could like build a rink in the forest. I don't think you could find a Colonial Blue Jacket and play hockey with him. A Flame, you couldn't do that. But a Penguin, you can.
They have Flames at the Flames. Like, what if you put, like, Johnny Gaudreau in, like, one of those, like, flame-repellent suits and then set him on fire and, like, had him skate out onto the ice?
That could work.
Come on. That would be awesome. I would pay to see that. I would pay about $6.50.
I think
$6.50.
The only one that would be better than a Penguin or Johnny Gaudreau in a fire suit is the Boston Bruins playing hockey with an actual bear. That might be a way to make me actually enjoy watching the Boston Bruins.
I'm all for this. I am 100% for that.
Yeah, let's make that happen.
Just one Boston Bruin in particular.
Yeah, if you could put Brad Marchand and a Grizzly on the same piece of ice, that would be fantastic.
I was going to say Patrice Bergeron, but whatever. Brad Marchand works.
Yeah, I think there's a couple that you are okay if they're doing that right now. Avs won, Leafs won. We're in a better mood today. Before we get into the show, let everyone know about ATB Financial. They're our home for banking. They're the proud sponsors of the Alberta Podcast Network. If you head over to atb.com/listens, you'll be able to learn all the ways that they can provide you with what you need. They want to know the ways that they can help you. So head to atb.com/listens and let them know what you're looking for in the bank. They want to hear from you. So, Joel, we're here. We're a week into the playoffs. Today is day 7 of the playoffs. Most series have played 3 games, except for Washington, Columbus, and I believe that's it. Washington, Columbus is the only one still yet to play game number 3. The Los Angeles Kings could be eliminated tonight, but let's start in the East. Let's start with your Toronto Maple Leafs. You had it's cliched, but you had a bounce back game. Game 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Game 1, upsetting. Game 2, infuriating to the point where, from what I understand, you did not even bother to watch most of that game.
I watched until the Bruins scored once. And I was like, nope, not watching this again.
I'm not putting myself down that road. And if the Leafs had to come back, I most certainly would have told you, and you could have turned it on. But not much going on there. But last night, game number 3, do you think that with that game is a tale of what is going to happen or one game situation?
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily a bounce back. Can it be a bounce back if you didn't actually play the first 2 games?
I guess you could a bounce up.
Yeah, I don't, or just like a show up game. It's like, hi, we decided to play hockey. It was great. It was interesting that they all of a sudden were like, hey, you know what we should do? Be really fast. That's how they beat them last night, is they were just really fast, and the Bruins were really not. And then it all comes down to this. Frederik Andersen has been horrible the first 2 games, and then the first 2 periods of last night, he was fantastic in the 3rd period. So it all comes down to whether if Freddie is going to be fantastic, they could win the series. If he's going to be awful, they will play 5 games.
So that's one thing. I like the thought you have of the Leafs being fast, because everyone talks about how the Leafs need to be tougher against the Bruins. But we saw, I think back to what game number 1, was it the Hyman goal, the first goal for the Leafs in that series, where he just burned down the ice, got around everyone, scored. That was the Leafs at their best, was using that speed to get around Boston. A lot of people want them to get suckered into this physical battle, but it's a lot easier to just not get hit if you skate past someone.
That's totally it. Like, just play. I don't think Komarov is getting back in this series, whether he's healthy or not. Janssen and Kapanen are just crazy fast. They played so well last night. I
think, and they played well with Dominic Moore as their center. If you have 2 wingers who are playing well with 4th line minutes with Dominic Moore as your center, you're doing pretty well for yourself.
Yeah, so I still, it's near impossible to win a series after losing the first 2 on the road. It's happened I think it was 92% of the time the team that wins the first 2 at home win the series, and it hasn't happened since I forget, was it 93 or something like that? I told you the year.
I heard the year. It was 93, but whoever told you or where you read it was wrong about. It has not happened for the Leafs since 1993.
Oh, well, the Leafs are horrible then.
Right. So
they haven't made the playoffs since 93, so
it does happen a moderate amount. And with the amount of teams who went down 2-0 in the series, I would not be surprised to see one of those come back. And honestly, if we look at the teams who have taken a 2-0 lead, I think the Leafs are still the ones that I would vote most likely to come back down from 2-0. Before we move on to a different series, Nazem Kadri, suspension, 3 games for his hit on Tommy Wingels. What do you think?
It doesn't really matter what I think. If I say that I don't like it, everyone's just going to be like, you're just a homer. And if I say that I do like it, they're going to be like, stick up for your team. No, I don't know. There's no way that I don't care. Like, yeah, it was probably a 1-gamer. There's no way that was worth 6 games. That's
right.
Like a 1-game suspension in the regular season, not 3 in the playoffs. I'm not upset that he was suspended. I'm upset that they thought it was worth 6 to 8 games in the regular season.
What upsets me, I'm also, I think he should have been suspended. That was a reckless hit against the boards, but I look at that compared to the Drew Doughty hit, right? Doughty got suspended for 1 game, literally was it the day before, 2 days before? It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
In a close vicinity, he got hit or suspended for his hit up high. Now, Joel, can you remind me, what is it that causes a concussion? Like, what is it that the NHL is trying to remove with these headshots?
Intentional hits to the head?
Right, intentional hits to the head. But what causes a concussion, and we're not doctors here, but what causes a concussion is the brain changing speeds, hitting the skull, right? It's essentially like brain bruising to a degree, right? Now, what do you think is going to be worse? If you're skating down the ice and someone hits you directly in the head, your brain's going to be going from skating speed of 25 kilometers an hour, 25, whatever, to 0 in a second, or the amount of speed that Kadri hit Wingels. The trauma to the head is going to be a lot less on that Wingels hit than it is on the Doughty hit. But for some reason, Kadri's was 3 times less, or 3 times more. And that's what I don't get. Like, you're actually not punishing the reckless hit. Does it look worse? Sure. It looks worse to do that against the boards, but it's much less dangerous.
So the thing is, though, I don't know if I still don't think Kadri's hit even looks worse than Doughty's. Because, and I know Kadri made this argument, and everyone will say that you can't make this argument, but Wingels was on the ground. He fell to his knees. It wasn't like... You want to know how many times the Leafs have been hit in the head by Zdeno Chara this series? All the time. Is he getting suspended for it? No, because they're like, well, he's just a giant. Well, yeah, when someone's on their knees and you go in for a hit, it's the I think you can vouch for me on this. I think it should have been. I think Kadri should have been suspended. But there is no way that what he did was any worse than what Doughty did, than what PK Subban did to, was it McKinnon that got punched in the back of the head?
Yeah, and he'll have no discipline.
No discipline. I don't know how many times Chara has hit someone in the head just because he's a giant. The inconsistency of this rule is ridiculous. And I am 100% convinced. I know that this is true anyways, but this is 100% true. The NHL wants Boston to move on, not a Canadian market. They want big market teams. Because if this had been treated fairly, Kadri would have got 1 game, which is what he should have gotten. If he had gotten 1 game, I would have been fine. He should have gotten suspended, not for 3 though.
Yeah, well, and with the Leafs winning last night, he will be back in this series for Game 5 in Boston. So we will see. I think that game's on Saturday, I believe. So we'll see how that goes for the Leafs and Kadri and the Bruins. So what do you think? We're sitting here, Leafs 2-1. Obviously, we both have anti-homer colored glasses on most of the time. But what are the chances Leafs win
Boston
the series?
It's going to be Boston in 5. Yeah.
Okay. I would say, I think 6 at this point. After seeing what the Leafs did last night, Boston really had If the Leafs had kept the throttle down, then they could have made it less close. If they had have kept that down, Boston had a very good third period because the Leafs let them have a very good third period. So, lots still to play, but it is very difficult to come back from a 2-0 deficit. Tampa, they're up 2-1 on the Devils with Game 4 coming up in Jersey. Home team hasn't lost yet, which is always, much like the Leafs, always can lead to a long series. But I think after seeing last night, Tampa let the Devils into that one, but I still have great faith that they will wrap up that series probably fairly quickly.
Interesting that Cory Schneider, he played well last night. Was it last night? Whatever night they played.
Yeah, it's I guess let's touch on both of those now. Schneider in New Jersey, Braden Holtby getting the net back for Game 3 tonight in the Cap series. It's almost like you should just play your best goaltender, who you hate to be your franchise goaltender, from the beginning.
Yeah, are you surprised? Am I surprised that the one game they've won so far is the game that Schneider played? Not really. I get that Schneider didn't have a great season or end of the season, but played well last night. Only gave up goals. I believe they were only power play goals. Didn't let a goal in even strength. Played well. He will play every game of this series now.
Yeah, you have to stick with that. I think you can. There's only so much flipping of goaltenders that you can. I fully expect that both Schneider and Holtby will start both of these games the rest of the way. Because, Holtby, he came in relief in Game 2, led the Caps to overtime, ended up losing that one in overtime to the Jackets. But again, I think if you give him that whole game, that game does not go into overtime. The Caps can win that in regulation. So this is, just a lot of weird, we both, as I recall, I know certainly last week I said they should be starting Holtby. I think you said it as well. It didn't make sense then, and at least they're doing it now. But these are the kinds of things that don't, you only have one chance to pick your starting goalie. If you give them 2 games to lose, coming back from that is not easy.
Does Washington make a series of this? The Devils aren't going to. It's great. They scored, I guess technically they can. Chances are they won't. So, but I think Washington's more likely to make a series of this. You can't do you think there's anything to the mindset of the players when you're starting your backup over a guy like Braden Holtby?
I think there definitely is. Yeah, if you're saying that you don't trust the guy, that's the guy that they've been even just friendly with, right? When your guy, your teammate at length, has suddenly been pushed aside, that does, I would say, have an effect on the room. I think you would see it in any sport, right? If you all of a sudden were to change a quarterback, it's different in football than it is in hockey, but there's definitely an amount of comfort that you have with that guy, and I think you want to know that your coach is giving you the best players. And in that room and outside of the room, I think we all can agree that Braden Holtby is the one you would rather have over Philip Grubauer on any average day, no matter what's happening. Same thing with Schneider and Kincaid.
I was going to say, maybe that's why, maybe the Devils players are hey, we got our guy in there. We can, we have a better shot of actually winning this game. Let's do it. I think there's totally, I know this is the biggest comparison, not the biggest, this is the worst comparison, but I'm about to do it. So,
that's all right. I have another terrible comparison after, so this will be surpassed.
Okay, so I was just thinking, so last year I played slow pitch. We had 2 pitchers last year on my team. One, phenomenal, great pitcher, one of the best. And I know you're saying there's not really a good or bad pitcher in slow pitch, There actually is. There are guys who can actually be better than other. The other one was awful. He would walk people. He would walk like the worst hitters on the other team. And we played awful behind him. Because, like, the amount of times that I just, like, I'd be in the field and I'd be like, it don't matter what I do tonight. I can hit as many hits as I can. I can make as many great plays in the field. He's such a bad pitcher, we're going to lose anyways. And so 100% of the time I would play worse behind him because it was in my head that we were going to lose anyways.
Yeah. We'll talk more about the Pred series after, but this is a comparison I think you would find interesting. The Predators pulled Pekka Rinne last night after the Avalanche had a field day, which, celebrate that. But they put in UC Saros, and the comparison that was made to Saros, Brian Boucher of NBC compared him to Vesa Toskala.
Ooh, ouch.
In a positive way. He said, this guy reminds me a lot of Vesa Toskala.
That's a positive way. That's not a
good.
Positive thing.
That's something you want out of even a backup goaltender. There's a reason he disappeared very quickly. So let's go to your Penguins. You saw them on Saturday. They scored 7 goals in Game 1. Series is 2-1. This is what, although we're fairly confident Tampa's going to win, this is the series that I still think is the biggest lock to move on. I would think this is done in 5.
Pittsburgh, the East. Well, I think the West is a worse division. The East, like, there's a bigger gap between the bad teams and the good teams. Like, there's there's 3 really, really, really good teams in the East, 1 or 2 okay teams, and then just a bunch of terrible teams.
Yeah, and even in the playoffs, right? Like the wild card teams, even the Flyers weren't a wild card team, but they have not looked good in front of, for some reason, still Brian Elliott.
Yeah, and then in the West, you have one potentially really, really good team, one potentially pretty good team, and then a bunch of probably not really good teams. I think there's just the Pittsburgh Philly series. I can't believe I'm surprised they got a game after those first 2.
Yeah, well, they won Game 2, but for sure it was that was
after the first one. Wasn't it like 8-0 or something?
7-0 for Game 1, and then Game 2 the Flyers managed to get the win, which I was surprised as well. After the 7-0 debacle, I guess one could call it, I was very surprised. I was trying to come up with something else, but not a good game for the Flyers. And I think we've seen, from that series, just how that Penguins offense, you said this about your series. If the Leafs, and they did it last night, if the Leafs can shut down the top line for the Bruins, they win the series, right? And the Penguins, you can't do that. You can't just have one shutdown line. When they're throwing lines with Malkin, Kessel, Crosby on different lines, there's always someone who can burn you out there.
Yeah, and they're just so deep. They're so deep, like, lines-wise, emotionally. They're just such a deep team.
It's true. They're
Phil Kessel's just dropping down smash poetry. Is that what it's called? I forget what it's called.
Slam
poetry.
Yeah.
Slam poetry. Oh, man. Would you go to a Phil Kessel slam poetry session?
100%. That would, in a heartbeat.
I would pay at least 3 times the $650 I would pay to go see some slam poetry from Phil Kessel.
Yeah.
Because, he's going to be, in sweats and a blazer, like a sport coat.
Yeah.
And then he's going to have probably some sort of beverage on a stool. And then it's going to be like that loose leaf paper from elementary that's been folded up a bunch of times that he's just holding.
Just pulls out of his pocket and kind of has some chicken scratch on it.
Yeah, it's going to be, that would be so good.
I assume that at least one of the poems, thinking of what his content is, At least one of his poems is about how he got left off the World Cup of Hockey team, because he's probably still bitter about that.
Oh, for sure.
One about Randy Carlyle. Would there be a Randy Carlyle poem in there?
Probably, or like, I don't know. I don't know. And then like one about a former girlfriend. There's got to be a former girlfriend in there.
Yeah, and then everyone just gets to figure out who that special person is. Who did he write that poem about?
Is there one about Joffrey Lupul?
I don't see why not.
That would be great. Yeah. Or Dion Phaneuf.
Ooh. I assume that everyone will think that there's two poems about an ex-girlfriend, but one of them is actually about Dion Phaneuf.
That's funny. That would be... This needs to happen. Can this please happen?
I'm rapidly searching in hopes that it has already happened. I have not... When you search Phil Kessel slam poetry, what do you think is the first thing that comes up on Google?
No idea. I couldn't even begin to guess.
There is a picture of, or it's an article about Phil Kessel being painted. Is a picture of Phil Kessel being painted from one of his now infamous memes. So that's all. I guess Roberto Luongo read some poetry once, but Phil Kessel has not done poetry. There was a Ryan Nugent Hopkins poetry slam contest. That's less exciting. I would not want that.
There's nothing fun about that.
Yeah. Phil, if you're listening, please send us your poetry. What else has been going on? I guess the West has had some games. My Avalanche, they won. Everyone was, giving me a hard time that the Avs had lost 2 games in a row. Just making the playoffs. I said this beforehand, and it actually came true. Just making the playoffs was enough of a win for me. I didn't need them to win a game in the playoffs. Last night, the fact that they won, I was very happy about that. There was nothing that made me, need that, though. Making the playoffs was enough of a win for me to go away happy. That said, last night, it felt real good chasing Rinne from net. It felt real good to be the Avalanche of old, where same as the Leafs, we do not need to play a physical game. Now, Gabe Landeskog certainly brought that, but if we're playing fast, then it doesn't matter how physical PK Subban tries to be.
It's true. Yeah, you look good. You're a good little hockey team there. I could see you winning another 1 or 2. I don't know if you can win the series.
I think what it comes down to is, do we have the Pekka Rinne who was at the start of last year's playoffs and through the regular season, or the Pekka Rinne from the end of last year's playoffs that we saw? Pekka Rinne, he's not young, right? I was starting to wonder this last night, and there's no way that we can verify this in any way. Pekka Rinne is a goaltender of the age of 35. Last year in the playoffs, 34, and he certainly fell apart against the Penguins in the finals. And you can say, well, that's the Penguins, right? They can make anyone look bad, but if there is now a second attempt at this in which he struggles at the end of a season, it might just be that you have a 35-year-old goaltender who can't handle a full regular season where he plays as many games as he did and then a playoff run. He started 59 games in the regular season, now into the playoffs. Certainly not a light workload for a 35-year-old.
Yeah. Apart from that, do you still think? Who do you think do you still think they're the favorite of coming out of the West, or?
I think for a lot of people it's going to be the Knights, just because they're up 3-0. Part of the Knights being up 3-0 is the fact that the Kings are that mediocre, and so I would say that it's them. Depending on the health of some of the Jets, I still think could be them. If I had to, trying to think through this, I would probably say that they're probably still the favorite. They haven't lost anyone to injury, which almost every team has, either injury, suspension if you're Kadri. Well, even the Leafs have lost people to injury, right? Is Janssen back? What's his deal?
Yeah, he came back right away. He only missed a couple shifts.
Okay. So yeah, almost everyone's lost someone to injury. or something, right? The Avs have lost Gerard, putting them down 2 defensemen now. So yeah, I think that they're still a contender, and I still think I would call them the favorite to get out of the West.
Yeah, I don't know. Like the tough thing is that neither of these teams, like none of the, like, so Winnipeg, who is it, the Knights, and Nashville, like, I don't know how great any of the teams are they're playing.
That is the problem, right? Because the Wild looked pretty mild.
Yeah, they don't look great. The Kings don't look good at all. Anaheim's been awful.
Anaheim has been by far the worst play. And obviously it's easy to say that on the heels of an 8-1 loss, but they have not really been in any of these games.
The Leafs hadn't won last night, we would be debating whether the Leafs or the Ducks were the worst team in the playoffs. But
we'll see. I've been, lots of conversation about coaching there. We'll get to some coaching changes because there's been 3 already this offseason. But lots of people wanting Randy Carlyle gone at Anaheim.
Well, I won't say too much about that.
I think we can assume your thoughts on Randy Carlyle.
Yeah, I don't think. I think the winner, the team that's going to the Stanley Cup Finals in the West is the team that wins the Nashville-Winnipeg series.
Right. Whoever wins the Central, however, I guess, yeah, every team in those matchups is from the Central. So whoever wins that Central Division side of the bracket is, I would say, is my favorite as well. Yeah,
even so, like, if Minnesota comes back to beat Winnipeg and then comes back to beat Nashville, like, I would be very fine with picking them to beat whoever's coming out of the Pacific. Same with Colorado. Colorado just gets on this super hot run, beats Nashville, beats Winnipeg. I don't care who's coming out of the Pacific. I would guess the Avalanche are going to take them. So, like, that's the thing. I don't know who. Everything's kind of shaking out the way that I expected it to.
Yeah, I think for the most part it is as thought.
Except the Knights.
The only one I expected the Knights to beat the Kings. I don't think they'll get past San Jose. I did not expect the Jackets to do as well against the Caps, and so I think that's the only series where I'm surprised. I picked the Leafs to beat Boston, but I'm not surprised that Boston's up 2-1.
I'm pretty sure the Caps are my Cup finalists or winners in my bracket.
Ooh, that could be bad.
I'm never good at these things anyways.
There's a lot of people who are going to be very, very disappointed. I think actually, except for the Caps one, all of mine are winning, except for, well, the Caps I have, and then I have the Leafs over Boston. So everything else I'm doing just fine with so far. Let us go to what other series are there in the West? So we talked about that. We talked about San Jose, Anaheim. Not really much to talk about. I am surprised how well Evander Kane has done in San Jose. I think we knew that he would, he has been good. This is his first time in a playoff matchup. And to a degree that can be an overrated fact to toss out there. Like, well, it's his first time there. He's clearly going to struggle. Not at all.
Yeah, the Sharks are going to give him so much money.
Just that entire Joe Thornton contract when he retires at the end of this year. Because I think at this point, it looks, he's been taking warm-ups every game, but he's not playing.
Is he, like, I don't understand, like, is he hurt? Or is he just old?
So he's hurt.
But, like, because he's old, like, it's not, or I don't know.
He did have an injury. I believe it was I want to say it was his knee. So I'm not sure what part of the knee, if it was ACL, MCL, but one of those. So he had a fairly significant knee injury. But I think if you look at it, Joe Thornton coming in, he'll be 39 next year, coming off a big injury. Does he want... I don't think Joe would want to go out on an injury. That's the only reason I could see him coming back.
Yeah, but the Sharks have they've looked great, but again, are they just looking great against a terrible team?
Yeah, so we'll see what comes out of both of those series: San Jose, Anaheim, Vegas, LA. Lots to be decided. I would not, I would say if I had to pick, Vegas eliminates the Kings tonight.
Are you like all in on Winnipeg like everyone seems to be right now?
I'm not all in. They certainly, obviously they not just looked beatable, but they were beatable in Game 3. I think that could be a confidence thing. They're down Tyler Myers, so he's out for Game 4, probably out for Game 5. Like, I would not expect him to be back this series. And outside of that, they do have most of their roster stable. The Wild have lost Matt Dumba. They've lost Ryan Suter, so their defense is in much worse situation than the Jets are. I would probably still pick the Jets.
Yeah, I'd still pick the Jets against Minnesota. Everyone I feel like the hockey world is just like all on board with this team being amazing. I don't know. I'm not convinced, but
yeah, I'm not sold that they're fantastic. Is what it is. One thing that I've kind of found interesting following is, and what happens, it becomes a huge part this time of the year, but power plays are something that you see, and taking bad penalties. How many games do we see, at least once a game, someone scoring a power play goal? And in these small sample sizes, we see these, huge discrepancies between your power play and the other team's PK. Some of these series, you have teams. The one that stands out to me the most is the that Wild Jets series. The Wild got back into Game 3 because the Jets were taking so many penalties. Right, they were able to put score on the power play to get up in those games. Same thing in almost every game where I'm like, well, this has gotten out of hand. It's because of power play troubles. What do you think it is this time of the year that teams just suddenly forget how to play disciplined hockey? Is it the fact that you're playing so close to that edge you don't know what the refs will and will not call this time of the year, or what is it?
The refs are the worst. Like, there are so many times that I'm watching, I'm like, why isn't that called? That is 100% a penalty. I hate this. I hate how there's different rules in the playoffs.
So you would be fine if something that's called in the regular season decides a playoff game? Because to me, I look at it like this. You're giving these teams who all have offensive talent, so their power plays are almost all going to be good or great. You're giving them an opportunity, essentially almost a free goal. It's
maybe
30%.
Maybe don't call as many penalties.
Or don't commit illegal things.
Well, there's that. There is that, but there's also don't be do you want to get me started about linesmen dropping the puck?
It has, so I know, and our listeners have heard many a time Joel ranting about it. It's got to the point in your Leafs Bruins series, the announcers are now talking about it. The players are every face-off, it seems, are getting frustrated. It is ridiculous how bad the linesmen are in that series.
So I literally watched, so Bozak was up against Krejci. Bozak goes down because it was an icing in the Toronto zone. So Bozak is going, he puts his stick down first. Krejci puts his stick down next, waiting. Bozak lifts his stick. Linesman drops the puck. Krejci wins it. They blow it dead. Bozak gets the warning. He waited it was a good 3 seconds. Very next time so Bozak gets to stay in because it's an icing. He stays in. Krejci goes. Bozak puts his stick down. Waiting. Linesman drops the puck. Krejci didn't put his stick down, so he blows it dead. I was like, no one knows when you're going to drop the puck, and these guys don't want to be sitting down, hunched over, getting. Oh, it's so annoying. I'm so annoyed by it.
As you should
every
be.
time,
and it's impossible, especially now that they've made a penalty tied to it. So, if if you get kicked out and then the next guy has an infraction, it's a penalty. These guys are like, the faceoffs have become terrible. When there was literally one last night in your game where both centermen had gotten kicked out. Like, who wants to watch that?
There's been several where both have been kicked out. Like, it's just ridiculous. But that's the kind of thing. But even refs are doing that. Like, I was surprised. Like, Morgan Riley, like, basically did what PK Subban did to McKinnon to Pasternak, but punched him in the face instead of the back of the head. No call. The ref was watching it. I was like, seriously? Like, I don't get. So either in the regular season, that would have been a penalty for sure.
Yeah.
So just make it consistent. I don't choose one way. If you're going to call every little thing, good teams will learn not to do illegal things. If you're not going to, guys are going to push the limit. But just be consistent.
Well, and I think it depends on like how the NHL, what kind of game the NHL wants it to be. They've made so many changes trying to make this into a speed game where you're taking away the clutching and grabbing and all of those things. But then if you add that back in the playoffs, you take your fast-paced game and then slow it right down. So I think you would see a lot less of the Leafs being able to do what they do if you were to do that. Joel, do you want some breaking news?
Yeah. Breaking
news, Vezina finalists are announced.
Oh, so you're watching Rob Volman go off on Twitter too.
He has some thoughts on it. Vezina finalists are Connor Hellebuck from Winnipeg, Pekka Rinne from Nashville, and Andrei Vasilevsky from Tampa Bay. What are your thoughts on that?
Also known as the goalies with the most wins in the league.
Wins, which everyone knows is the best way to decide who wins an award on quality, right?
Yeah. There's no way Vasilevsky is the best goalie in the league. There's no way.
It's tough. I always find it difficult when the favorite for the Norris and the favorite for the Vezina are on the same team. I always look at it and say, it's unlikely both of them had the best season.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Speaking of Norris, did you see Hedman spear Nico Hischier?
Hit him right in the Hischers.
Yeah. You know what he also didn't have to do? Go to a hearing with the NHL Department of Player Safety.
He didn't have to sit down. Didn't have to miss anything. Yeah.
No, like, this is the worst. This is the most, like, it's so inconsistent.
Yeah. For the record, if you were to take the NHL this year and rank the goaltenders by goals saved above average, which is like, that's everyone's favorite advanced stat for goalies. It's kind of like a war for goaltenders. The leaders, none of them, the top three in goals saved above average, none of them were nominated for the Vezina. One, Sergei Bobrovsky, double the player in second place. So he was he had 33. In second place was Philip Grubauer, now the backup goaltender for the Washington Capitals, with 16. And then right behind him, John Gibson of the terrible Anaheim Ducks. Pekka Rinne, the first on the list, coming in at 4th, but also UC Saros, his backup, coming in at 7th. So again, when you play behind a very good team and your backup puts up the same numbers, they can't both be great, right? Like, I think that lends you to think maybe it's not that guy. If I were to pick someone, Bobrovsky would be in there, Gibson would be in there, and I'd probably still leave Vasilevsky in that conversation because he had a pretty good season, but the fact that Bobrovsky's not nominated for the Vezina is ridiculous.
Yeah, crazy. What do you think about the coaching changes?
Yeah, so we've had 3 coaches leave so far. Ken Hitchcock retired again, leaving the Dallas Stars. Alain Vigneault fired by the New York Rangers. And just today, the entire coaching staff for the Calgary Flames gone. Again, Glenn Gulutzan is out. Hitchcock, this is the second time he's retired, if I'm not mistaken, so it didn't surprise me to see him bow out again. Vigneault, it's not his fault that they were bad this year. I know a lot of people were frustrated, but it's easy to blame the coach. They're in a rebuild. And I think it's understandable to want to bring in a coach who can work with the players through the rebuild. But unless you have someone in mind who is good enough to be able to lead that rebuild, I don't see getting rid of someone who is still a great coach to replace it with an unknown.
Yeah, I doubt it was because of this, but maybe this gives Vigneault a chance to go somewhere else. Like, because he's kind of got to be running close to his coaching end. He's not going to be around a whole lot longer, especially if he's going to be coaching teams that are as bad as the Rangers were. So, but maybe he goes somewhere, comes an assistant on one of the top teams or something like that. I don't know. Maybe it's a bit of getting him out plus getting a fresh face. This gives you a chance to bring in a younger guy, doesn't have as much experience, see how he is as a coach, and then when the rebuild is kind of getting finished, you could potentially move on from him if he's not what you want. Easier than Vigneault, right?
Yeah, I think the only reason I would have issue with that is if you're bringing in someone that would hinder player development, I think that would become an issue. In the same way that I think you would, I look at the Oilers as an example, right? Coaching certainly was part of the reason why they took so long and so many people didn't work under them, and then they went somewhere else. And Taylor Hall leads the Devils to the playoffs. Jordan Eberle leads the New York Islanders to just missing the playoffs. I think a lot of that can happen. So that's the only reason that I'd be concerned about that. I think if maybe Vigneault didn't want to be part of a rebuild, which is fine as well. If he told them, like, I don't want to be here, you don't want that kind of an attitude around the team either, right? You don't want a bunch of young guys coming in and just having a terrible time under their coach.
Yeah, so Flames, not surprising. They probably should have made the playoffs.
They should have made the playoffs, and I think I wouldn't have been surprised with how that went if they had fired Gulutzan during the regular season as a last-ditch effort, right? That could have been the trade deadline piece that you need is a new coach. Yeah, so who would you try and get to replace Gulutzan? Like, who do you try and get in Calgary? I'm less concerned about the other two teams. Yeah, and I think whoever shows up in New York, there's certainly the money to bring in a big name. I don't think so. I'd be calling up Vigneault and seeing what he could bring. I think he would do well with that team. He's worked with teams similar. The Rangers are a little different in roster makeup, but not that different, right? There's not a top player. They had a lot of really good defensemen in New York, as the Flames do as well. Obviously, there's no Henrik Lundqvist in Calgary, but I would for sure be calling him first. There's no Luongo, Schneider, or Lundqvist. This would be the worst goalie Vigneault has seen in years. Yeah. So, with that being said, you've got, Lindy Ruff is a guy who still doesn't have a head coaching job. You don't want him. You don't want Lindy Ruff as your coach? No. I don't. Do you? I would try it. I don't know. What else are you going to do? Bring back Daryl Sutter? No, you don't want him. These old guys that have been around forever, like, maybe think about getting a bit of a younger guy. Like, get someone new. Get someone who you know what you're going to get with Lindy Ruff. You know what you're going to get with Vigneault. I would be more okay with Vigneault in Calgary than Lindy Ruff. But I don't know. I don't know who, like, go get a nobody. See what they can do. Go get, like, the Gabe Kapler, because that's working super well in Philly. Yeah, this is the baseball season. Go sign, I don't know. Craig Conroy's been a part of that team. I guess he got let go as well, because I believe he was part of the coaching staff there, not the management team. So he's not getting it. Yeah, I said that and I was like, wait, he might have gotten let go today. So he's the assistant GM. So there you go. You can make him there. Just hire yourself, which always works out well as well. Yeah, there's a lot of these old school coaching guys. I'm in the same boat. I think you do need to find someone. Unfortunately for the Flames, Gulutzan was that guy that they thought could be the fresh face that they brought in, who could be part of the future coaching for the Flames. So, there's no, from all I can tell, there's no Travis Green like the Canucks had waiting in the wings to become the next coach of this team. That was what they had in Gully, and it didn't work.
So the first article I see has got Dave Tippett, the Stockton Heat AHL coach Ryan Huska, Daryl Sutter, Todd Reardon. I guess that's the Capitals assistant coach. I think he and there's a few assistant coaches every year that are ready to make the jump to a head coach. So that's who I would look at. What assistant coaches haven't had a job yet, and go get one of them.
Yeah, exactly. So lots of coaches, and I don't think the Flames are going to rush to make this decision. They just let him go and the rest of the coaching staff today. So difficult to say. I do know that the Carolina Hurricanes and their coach Jim Peters teams have been asking for permission to sign him. The team has not decided if they are or are not going to move forward with him as their coach next year. So that's another angle that you could look at. He's a potential, and I would be very okay if you brought him in. He's not a long-term coach, but he certainly has experience with a team. So
for sure. Is there any other news?
Lots of games, lots of things happening. We've been, following this very closely here, getting ready. So I think as much as there's, so much more that we could go deep into every series, but without, doing that, I think there's, some injuries happened. Zach Parise, let's just touch on that real quick. He's out again. So if, another injury is to the Wild, I was talking about that. Zach Parise fractured sternum. So he's week to week, which sounds like you're out for the playoffs. That sounds like, just shut it down, Zach.
Too bad. He had a rough season.
Yeah, he's had a tough go of things as of late. Sean Couturier injured again today. So this is the type of year where, you never know who is and is not going to be ready. Sam Girard for the Avs was a last-second scratch, and now he's missed 2 games. So lots of this happening. We'll be seeing in the next few days more award nominations coming out. So the Vezina started today. We'll be seeing those throughout. Now that, we didn't talk about this once the playoffs hit, but who would you have as your Hart Trophy nominee? Not nominee, winner. Who would you have as the winner?
McKinnon probably still.
Okay. I didn't want to just have a super biased opinion, but obviously I think so as well.
If I was okay with goalies winning it, it'd be Anderson. The Leafs are in the playoffs because Freddie Anderson played out of his mind this year.
I think if you were to do it truly, if it were to be the player most valuable to his team, it would be any goalie, right? It should be the goalie on any team. If your team makes the playoffs, it's probably because of your goalie. So, lots of
Gibson. These guys played so well, but they just don't have the numbers. But because who you put? I'm trying to think. Ryan Miller. I don't think the Ducks make the playoffs if Ryan Miller plays 65 games. No,
the Jacket. I don't even remember who the Jackets' backup is if Sergei Bobrovsky doesn't win.
Korlapovsky or
Korpisalo.
Korpisalo.
Yeah. So,
that guy.
Yeah, you don't make the playoffs with Korpisalo in net. You don't make the playoffs with. Yeah, I think if any of those, Miller would be the best, but McElhinney did moderately well, but you're not making them with him. And you're certainly not making the playoffs if Jonathan Bernier is your goaltender.
Probably not. I'd go McKinnon. I think McDavid will get nominated, but I don't think he'll win.
Yeah, I think you have, I would say that the final 3 would be Hall, McKinnon, and I don't know if McDavid would get nominated.
I think he's going to.
It wouldn't surprise me. There's a lot of a lot of old school guys. I do like the fact that we will get to know who voted for who in the nominees this year. I like the fact that they're making them all public. That's good.
Hear, hear.
Absolutely. Well, Joel, let's remind everyone about high sticking. We don't have to pick games because we are playing high sticking for every game of the Stanley Cup playoffs this year, which has been a ton of fun. How many points do you think we have handed out so far in 6 days of the playoffs?
100.
217 high sticking points have been handed out so far.
Just points for days.
Everyone's getting points.
So basically, if you could start playing now and you'd be fine.
If you start playing now, so the leader right now is Ken, who won the last round of the regular season. But he's been riding a streak where he got what night was that? There was one night that he got 9 points. So that's the thing. You pick 3 winners, you got 9 points. That's a third of what the leader has right now. If you started right now, you would definitely still have a chance to. Well, you get any points during the draw,
yeah.
Right? You get any points during the draw, but you can make yourself a heavy favorite to make it in. And even if you look, so with 200 points, he has a 1 in 9 chance of winning at the final draw. Second place with Jack Marsden, he's 21 points. He's got a pretty good chance as well. So and everyone has a solid chance. Lots of points being handed out. Lots of chances to win a Fourth Line Podcast mini stick or puck. I think it's been a lot of fun. It's always exciting when it comes down to it to see who wins and. The best players in the league. What would be your strategy? If you were playing high sticking, what would be your strategy for the playoffs?
I don't know. There's no strategy. Just pick a guy.
My strategy is just pick the best player. I don't care
That's good.
who it is. So like if I'm picking for the Avs, now granted for Avs Twitter Psychic where you pick the player who scores the first goal, I always pick Carl Soderberg because as I tweet out twice a week, Carl picks Carl. That has to happen, right? So if you have some sort of novelty that you like to go off of, do that. If you want, Nate, who was in our fantasy hockey league, he always picked for an entire season. He picked players with ties to Minnesota. It may surprise you, Joel. He never won.
Not surprised.
Yeah. But, with the, San Jose Sharks, you should be picking Evander Kane every game. With the Avalanche, you should be picking Nathan McKinnon. With the what's another runaway? With Tampa, Tampa's hard because there's so many good players. New Jersey, if you're not picking Taylor Hall, you're doing it wrong. So, those are my tips. If you want, I've never tried to win this, but if I had to, that's what I would be doing.
Sounds good.
Well, let's remind everyone again about the Alberta Podcast Network, our favorite network to go for fine Alberta podcasts. If you head to albertapodcastnetwork.com, you can learn about all the different shows. There's about 30 shows on the network right now, so a lot going on, as well as a lot of events. The Alberta Podcast Network is incredibly busy, obviously. We mentioned a few years ago their involvement with the upcoming Pod Summit in May. However, they're also doing a number of different things. AlbertaPodcastNetwork.com/events can tell you about all these things. May 8th, the Alberta Podcast Network presents Sick Boy, a documentary about Jeremy Sanders, whose podcast uses laughter to change the way people think about serious illnesses such as cystic fibrosis. Podcast-related things will go on in the lobby of the Metro Cinema. This film will be preceded by a short film called Picture This, about what it means to be disabled and desirable. So this is a great event happening up in Edmonton, May 8th. If you want there, head over to albertapodcastnetwork.com/events. Tickets are $13 for this movie. I think it'll be really interesting. It's a way that you connect podcasts, which, obviously if you're listening right now, you know what it's like to listen to a podcast. And I think I look at the community of people we have surrounding our show, and there's a lot that can happen from podcasts. So that'll be a really interesting movie.
Like it.
All right. Well, Joel, we are off to go, watch some more hockey or potentially take a breather. Your Leafs get an extra day off, do they not? They're playing Thursday.
I have no idea.
Okay. This is my way of telling you now. Your Leafs don't play until Thursday.
Okay. Yay.
So you've got tomorrow off. There's only 3 games tonight. Jackets, Caps are on right now. We've got Wild Jets, and then obviously Vegas and the Kings. My Avalanche are back at it tomorrow. Joel's Leafs play on Thursday. So we will continue to be on Twitter, on Facebook, on the emails. If you want to find us on Twitter to play High Sticking, we're at Fourth Line Podcast. If you want to just pick the same players for every single game of a series, you can DM them to us, you can email them to us, or Facebook them to us. You can just send them to us any way that you know how. Mail at thefourthlinepodcast.com and thefourthlinepodcast.com for all things. If you want high sticking standings, thefourthlinepodcast.com/high sticking has them for you. So you can go over there, see where you fit into those rankings. And until next week,
Boom City.